My name is Simon Peter. One day, my partners and I were cleaning out our nets after a long, hard night of fishing. We were tired and discouraged. We had nothing to show for our efforts. Jesus was preaching as usual to the many people who followed him from here to there, listening to his every word. He asked if he could sit in my boat. I rowed him out just a little so his voice would carry. When he had finished teaching, he asked me to row out a little further and throw my nets in the water again. I told him it was pointless. We had worked all night and caught nothing. But I did as he asked. And then, astonishingly, so many fish the nets broke trying to pull them in. So many fish, we filled our ships until they began to sink under the weight of them. I fell down on my knees before the Lord, feeling sinful and faithless in his holy presence. Then he told me I would no longer catch fish, but men. I did not fully understand, but I left my boats, my fish, my livelihood. I left everything to follow Jesus, and I have never looked back. Tonight, he tells us that one of these 12 men, his faithful disciples, will betray him. I vainly promised to follow him, even to death. But he looked right into my eyes and said that before the rooster crows, I will deny him 3 times. Deny him. Am I not the rock he called me to be? Could I lose my Lord, my friend, because I am not strong enough to be faithful? Is it I?
I'm known as Peter's little brother, Andrew. Since the day I was born, years ago, I left the fishing business to follow that fiery preacher, John the Baptizer. He was appointed by God to prepare the way for the long-awaited Messiah. And now, I follow him. I love to bring people to Jesus. I brought my brother to Jesus. And I've watched him grow and become a strong leader among us. I brought the little boy with a lunch of 5 loaves and 2 fish to Jesus. I've even brought Gentiles to meet the Master because he is open and loving to anyone who is searching for the truth. But Jesus has enemies in high places. Enemies who would love to silence him or even see him die. And he speaks of a betrayer in our midst. Oh, please do not let it be me who brings sorrow to my Lord. Jesus, is it I?
I am James, the lesser, known as such to describe my stature and to differentiate me from many other men named James. Since joining Jesus' group of followers, I have seen the most miraculous things. Jesus has the power to calm the sea, even the wind and the rain obey his word. Jesus has the power over demons. He has cast out evil spirits and given us the power to do the same in his name. He has the power of healing. He has taken away diseases that people have suffered with for years, even from birth. Beyond this, he has the power to forgive sin. And now, one of these men at this table, one who eats and drinks with him, will betray him. How could anyone doubt that he is the Lord, our Messiah, after walking and talking with him, after seeing prophecies fulfilled in miracle after miracle, proof after proof? He has called each of us to follow. Who could turn away? Is it I?
My name is James. John is my younger brother. We used to work with Peter and Andrew in the fishing industry. Jesus called us to follow him on the same day that he called Peter. And we did, thinking that he would establish his kingdom on earth and that he would be at his right hand man. Jesus calls John and me the sons of thunder. Actually, we are the sons of Zebedee, a rich and powerful man in his community who is a personal friend and some of the more influential religious leaders. At one time, I had hoped that this would assure me a position of power in the new kingdom. In fact, my mother suggested I should sit at Jesus' right hand when he claimed his throne. And John at his left, with after all, it was he who were invited to the mountain with Jesus. And we saw him transfigured. His face shone like the sun, and the voice of God spoke out in heaven. He chose me. He chose each of us. How could one of us betray him? We have seen his perfect adherence to the law. We have heard the voice of God say, "This is my Son." We have been present during countless miracles, healings, works no mere man could accomplish. Could it be my brother John? Could it be me? Is it I?
I am Matthew, and before I became a disciple of Jesus, I worked for the Roman government collecting taxes. I used to take advantage of one of the perks of this profession, skimming a little off the top for personal use. Listening to Jesus, I have come to realize that I have committed a sin against my neighbors. I took advantage of those people. I cheated them. I became wealthy by stealing their hard-earned wages and goods. I hoarded earthly treasures instead of seeking eternal ones. My heart has changed because of Jesus. I even threw a huge feast at my home and invited others who worked in that corrupt organization to meet him and perhaps be changed as well. But now that he speaks of a traitor among us, will the others suspect me, a known publican, a sinner? Lord, is it I?
Before Jesus called me, I was a member of the Zealots. We believe in God, and that God rules over this holy nation of Israel. And we refuse to pay homage or taxes to any Roman governor. Oh, it goes against my nature, but Jesus teaches that God ordains all powers and governments on earth, allowing them to rule over us. And we give our due and treat them with respect. Since following the Christ, I've tried to channel my zeal into telling others about Jesus, God's Son, and reaching out to people for his kingdom. Is there a spy among us? A Roman, perhaps? How could any follower of Jesus question his power and authority? He is God. He is God. He is our King. He is greater than any government. Could I somehow revert to my old ways? Could I, Simon, betray my King? Jesus, is it I?
I'm known as Bartholomew to some, Nathaniel to others. I've been a diligent student of the Scriptures and a disciple of John the Baptizer. My friend Philip told me of Jesus of Nazareth, saying it was he of whom the prophets had written. I was skeptical at first. Jesus of Nazareth? A filthy, immoral place. How could anything good ever come from Nazareth? But John said, Jesus is the Lamb of God who takes away the sin of the world. Then I met Jesus. It was as though I knew him already. He knew my innermost thoughts. Although I've always been a devout man, I realized Jesus offered something more, something intimate, something personal, something my religion has never offered me before. For 1,000 years, we have celebrated the Feast of Passover, remembering the bitterness of slavery with the herbs, remembering the 10 plagues with the 10 drops from the goblet, remembering how the blood from the sacrificed lamb protected the Israelites, and the angel of death passed over them and saved the firstborns. Remembering how God set his people free that wonderful day when they left in such a hurry. They had no time to cook the leavened bread. They had to bake unleavened bread in the warmth of the sun. And now, Jesus breaks the unleavened bread and says, take this, this is my body. He shares his cup, saying, this is my blood. Do this in remembrance of me. I don't understand. How could I betray him? Lord, is it I?
My name is Philip. Jesus came to me one day when I was working and said simply, follow me. I spent an entire day with him, and I was convinced this truly is the promised one. It has taken some time for me to understand that this man, this fulfilled promise, is actually God, here among us. Recently, thousands of men and women, whole families, were sitting on the hillside listening to him teach. Jesus asked me where we could buy bread to feed them all. At once I only thought of the actual physical cost of such a venture. Our treasuries do not hold such funds. I gave no thought to the people's discomfort or the possibility of any type of divine miracle. But Jesus took 5 tiny pieces of bread, 2 tiny fish, and he prayed over them and broke them into pieces. And with that we fed thousands and still collected 12 baskets of leftovers. God, here among us. Who would deny the promised one? This divine presence in our midst. And to whom would this person deliver Jesus? To the vain, arrogant priests who refuse to believe God has kept his promise? Or to the pagan Roman government that fears a rival ruler? Could any one of us forget his power, his compassion? Could I forget? Is it I?
His hands, carpenter hands, rough, weathered hands, and yet so gentle and loving. His hands reached out and touched the leper, and the disease was erased from his body. His hands reached out and touched Peter's mother-in-law, and her fever disappeared. His hands reached out and lifted Jairus' daughter from her deathbed. His hands opened the ears of the deaf and the eyes of the blind and mended the bones of the lame. Countless infirmities, illnesses, deformities, gone. His hands reached out, blessing little children when others would have turned them aside. His hands reached down, rescuing Peter out of a churning sea that would have swallowed him. His hands, blessing and breaking bread, folding in prayer. Such simple gestures, and yet so profound. Those hands that have shown mercy and kindness, given love and healing. Those hands that have served me, Thaddeus, and his other brothers, and worshiped his Father. They are the hands of God in this very room. All of us have received blessings from his hands. All of us have seen the miracles those hands have performed. Who could betray him into the hands of the enemy? Will I, Thaddeus, betray you? Is it I?
I am John, the beloved disciple, beloved, loved by Jesus, loved by the one who was in the beginning with God, loved by the one who is greater than all of us and yet washes our feet, setting an example of humility and servitude. You might think that because Jesus calls me his beloved disciple, that I have a reason to be proud. Oh, how I have learned that the opposite is true. I once thought that I might hold a place of power and prestige in his kingdom. But he has shown me over and over that the war he wages is a spiritual battle. He reaches out to the needy, paupers. He does not seek out the rich and powerful. He dines in the homes of sinners and common folk, not the elite. I have seen him equally befriend a well-known Pharisee as an immoral woman, forgiving both. God has sent his Son because he loved the world, the lowly, me, so much that he does not want any one of us to perish, but to have everlasting life. This Jesus, he is the way, the truth. He is life. Even though we are his closest friends and followers, I don't think we would truly understand the depth of his love. I believe he would give his life for mine. How could I not do the same for him? Will my pride cause me to stumble? Will I betray him? Could I? Jesus, is it I?
I've been listening to Jesus speak tonight around this table, and I simply do not understand. Words meant to comfort, but words met with confusion and misunderstanding. Talk of betrayal met with incredulity and suspicion. Where is he going? There's so much yet to be done, right here, right now. Sometimes I marvel that I, Thomas, have seen him with my own eyes. I have touched my Lord and Master with my own hands. I have watched him perform wonders, change lives. I don't want him to go away. Not now, not ever. And how could we follow him if we don't know where he's going? Is there something I've done or will do that will contribute to his betrayal that he speaks of? Has he seen my lack of faith, my hidden doubts, my fears? Is it I?